Well, to start off, could you please tell us about yourself and how you became the Chief Legal Officer at ESL FACEIT Group?
So my name is Chris Pakendorf. I'm a lawyer by profession from South Africa. I worked here and then I was offered a job in London and I worked in energy and infrastructure, and then I moved across to technology. And after a while I ended up doing my own consultancy, some for large companies and some for startups. One of them was FACEIT, which is now part of the ESL FACEIT Group. And that company had done its Series A, so it raised some money to be able to increase its operations and scale. And they asked me to join them as the Chief Strategy Officer and General Counsel, which I did. And I worked there for 6 years, and we built that up. And then it was rolled up into what is now the ESL FACEIT Group, in which I was fortunately offered to be the Chief Legal Officer. So now I'm the Chief Legal Officer and I run the legal department there, which we're busy scaling and building.
That's very cool. What are some of the laws that apply to gaming-oriented businesses?
That's a very good question. Esports, competitive gaming, is a little bit like the Wild West. If you watch westerns, and think of it like you're building a railway line from the east coast of America to the west coast. You know where you're going, but you're not quite sure what's in between. You know that if you get there first, I don't know if you're ever into westerns, but if you built a railway line, you got all the land on either side of the railway line for a mile, and if you got there first, you could own all of that. So that's a little bit how esports is developing. There are more and more laws coming. So when we first started, people didn't think this would ever be an industry or a business. It is now. It's a multi-billion-dollar big global business. It's the fastest growing form of entertainment in the world, and probably will, certainly in your lifetime, probably before you, my age, will be the largest and most popular form of entertainment in the world. And so as that evolves, in my analogy of the railway line, laws are being created that apply, but for gaming itself there aren't any. We would write up the rule book like Counter-Strike that we were talking about earlier. If you create a league and you run a league with tournaments and live events, we create rule books that dictate what can or can't happen. So if you can transfer players between teams, the rules around how the games are managed and so on. So there's no law that applies there. In the beginning, we would apply those rules. So you could be banned or disqualified, whatever the consequences were, or forfeit your prize money. But there are obviously rules that are on the periphery around human rights and around the health and safety. So running events, you have to have insurance and so on. So those laws all apply. And now there's a creep within the industry itself to start being regulated by governments. So mostly countries like France and so on pass laws that are specifically aimed at esports to regulate that. And more, the biggest laws that apply right now are around age verification, because we have an online platform, so where people play online, are they over a certain age? Do there are these laws that apply? If you're over 13, you can play with your parents' consent. If you're over 16, you can do more, and obviously if you're an adult, you can do what you like. So these laws impact what we do, as well as the laws around data and privacy, because it's a data-rich environment. And protecting people's privacy, so all these kind of laws apply. That's principally the main legal framework that you find, other than those that you would have in a normal business. So like running a company, like around employment and taxes and these kind of things.
You were saying about protecting people's privacy. FACEIT recently implemented an ID verification system, which aims to increase the security. What are the benefits that this system could introduce?
So that's a really good question. Some of the games are age restricted. In some countries that's by law, but in other countries it's just a recommendation. So like if it says 16 and over, but you're 15 and your parents don't mind, in many countries that's fine. It's a little bit like if your parents give you a beer, that's fine. But you can't go to the bottle store and buy one. So you have these issues, whereas in America you can't do that at all with alcohol. That's a little bit the same when it comes to a video game rating system. But because the platform is global, and the appeal of esports is global, so you could live in America and support a team in Europe or whatever. And it's not necessarily a geo-located support. the benefits of having that age verification is people will tend to lie. Where we have competitions where there are prizes, we have obligations in laws to pay money out. There's issues around gambling, which esports isn't, but it can quite easily become that if you pay out prize money. So that helps us to verify the ages of the people, but it also helps us to verify the identities of people, because competitive gaming has some unpleasant elements, which like a toxic environment around bullying and bad language and racism, and then cheating. And so we do have an anti-cheat, which is world class, but the age verification obviously has the way you framed it is better. Because people see it as age verification. The way you did is actually quite clever. The ID verification is up verifying your identities. You don't have multiple identities playing on the same platform, which is obviously a problem because you don't want that.
Yeah.
You don't want to play Counter-Strike against someone you know is cheating, because that ruins the appeal of the sport.
EFG does plenty of charity events. What is the process of getting these set up?
You mean like if you wanted to do one, for example, someone else wanted to do that, or how do we set them up?
Yeah, how do you set up your big charity events?
So we're actually doing one now in Saudi Arabia. That's about to happen. Gamers Without Borders. It'll be the biggest gaming event in the world. Hundreds of millions of dollars. It's set up in the same way as we would run any other event. Obviously, there's a revenue difference as to whether you're making profits or not. How do people go about doing that with us? Well, we have a team of folks who will work with you to help you set up these events and run them either for you as a white label service. So we'll do it for you and it'll look like it's you. Or we'll put the event on your behalf and you'd be like a title sponsor or something. Essentially, we go about it the same way as we would any other event. It's just the outcome is different, the object is different. Sorry, and I mean it will go beyond even charity. I mean, there are other events where we're pushing things that we think are important. Like having more women in gaming is a key thing, because it's a fast-growing demographic in competitive video gaming. And it's interesting, how do you move these people into, sort of, think of it like an iceberg, into the aspirational layer that you see at the top versus this huge layer at the bottom. So there are similar programs for that, although that's not a charity. It's a similar kind of arrangement. So it's actually pretty seamless. We do these kind of things quite often.
Out of curiosity, so do you play any games? And if so, which is your favorite?
So I'm actually pretty useless at playing games, but I do play Call of Duty. It's my favorite. I haven't played for a few months, but that's because I've just recently moved and it's all in my boxes, which I'm actually going to unpack next week. So Call of Duty is my favorite game, and I did for a while when it started play World of Tanks. And don't tell anyone I played it from on the conference call. So multiple screens on my desk, and at work we play video games quite often, so it's something I would play. But I'm not the biggest gamer if you look at what I do. And I worked in gaming before, and I worked in a startup called Havoc that used to create products that simulate physical reality, and was bought by Intel, and is actually now owned by Microsoft. So when I was in San Francisco, and even there, I wasn't that much of a gamer. I mean, I'm attracted to the industry because of its sort of pioneering spirit, and there's this sense of boundless, the opportunity for creating something new in a different industry. Most people think it's crazy, but now it's validated.
Yeah. A popular opinion is that gaming for adults is a waste of time. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely not. I think it's fantastic. I mean, I think I don't have the stats to hand. I think one of the fastest growing demographics in gaming, especially competitive gaming, even on a social level, is women, and they're adults, not children. So no, absolutely not. One of the most common things I would hear, because I used to live in a well-to-do-ish area in London where most people were bankers or lawyers or accountants, and my neighbours would either say, "Oh, you the guys who are polluting our youth," or over a beer says, "I'm like, yeah, no one's going to pay to watch that." Well, here we are 6-7 years later, and people do pay to watch it, and they actually pay a lot of money to do that. And I see in gaming a little bit like what I see in surfing, for example. Right? When I was younger, and probably not in your generation anymore, but surfing had a certain seen in a certain way, and often was seen as was looked down upon. But nowadays, if you go, you often see fathers and sons, or fathers and daughters, or mothers and sons surfing together. This you see happening in video gaming. You see families coming to our events, but you also see this cross-generational playing of video games. So people who grew up playing Counter-Strike have kids now, and those kids are playing Counter-Strike and they're watching Counter-Strike together. And a lot of the games are more intuitive. You know, Rocket League. I don't know if you're familiar. Well, Rocket League is you can put your granny in front of it. Once she understands it's the car that's not the ball. The rest of it's pretty intuitive.
Soccer, yeah.
Correct. And the same with games like Fortnite. You know, it just once you understand there's 100 people running around, it's not that hard to get the point that you're shooting someone, you want to survive. Yeah. In fact, that game's quite interesting because you don't have to actually shoot someone, you have to survive to make it to the end. And the same with Counter-Strike. It seems it seems strange what's going on, but it's easy to figure out. You say you play League of Legends. That's an older, form of esport, but that's much harder for people to understand.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. So no, I don't think it's a waste of time. I think it's important. It's a form of entertainment. I mean, it would be like telling someone, an adult, it's a waste of time to watch television.
Yeah.
If you're playing a video game, you're actually doing something, you're using your brain. And I think using your brain is important.
Yeah,
and it allows you to socialize, especially competitive gaming, because you can reach out across geographies. I mean, my son, who was at grade for 1 year, plays Fortnite, and he plays with some guys sometimes he was at grade with in London and Cape Town at school. They still play against each other.
Yeah, FACEIT's community is obviously very large and very
correct. Yeah.
well knit together.
Yes. Sorry, and that's the thing about esports, right? Is it's a community.
Yeah, definitely.
And you have these organizations that grow up around that, and people play together because they want to, and they have a common sense of identity. It's almost like a clan, and they become lifelong friends.
Yeah. Some big gaming news that happened recently is CS:GO 2. I don't know if you've heard. What are FACEIT's plans for CS:GO 2?
You mean, well, it will be on our platform. We'll be able to play it supported. I think as those maps go out, it's going to go into the tournaments and be there. And it may already be, to be honest with you, as a sitter. I have to look to see, but yeah, absolutely, we're going to embrace that. Counter-Strike's one of the biggest, it is the biggest, the most popular game that we have on our platform and that we are engaged with. Good question.
Thank you. As an old grey, how do you feel being back at Reunion? Is it probably your favorite place to be, or is like?
You mean, is the school my favorite place to be, or is it coming to the Reunion?
Coming to the Reunion.
So right now it's the Reunion. In case you're watching, you might hear them practicing in the background. It's my 40th Reunion, and it's interesting because I see how people's lives have changed, but yet they haven't. So we all have some similarities. The other reason I think reunions are great, and I don't know if you will associate with this now, maybe not, but you have a view of yourself when you're a teenager as to how you're growing up with all your own emotional and whatever issues you might have, angst, and as you grow up, which is normal for everybody. And I think at that time, I don't want to say it was different, like we had to walk through snow barefoot. I don't want to say that, but I think nowadays people are more aware of emotional issues.
Definitely.
And at that time when I was here in boarding school, it wasn't like that. And I think people tend to think these problems were unique to me, or there was something wrong with me, or I was a weakling at school, or I was never good enough, whatever. But I think what happens by going to reunions is you realize that we all had the same problems. We all just approached them differently and we managed them differently. And I think that's one of the great things about coming to the reunion. And obviously reliving your memories and seeing school, which had such a big impact on your life, is awesome. And to see that grey boys are resilient and tough, and they can make it in the world. They can do, if they put their mind to it, they can be successful. I enjoy coming back. I was here last 5 years ago. And even beyond the reunion, you know, I've lived in London 3 times. I would always go to the Grey dinner. There's one every year in November. And I've even been to one when I lived in California. I went down to LA. We had one in LA. And I went there. It was great. Yeah, no, it's a good way to stay connected.
So the Grey all over the world.
Grey is all over the world. There are Grey boys all over the world. I was talking to someone now who said they moved to the Caribbean and then went to look at a private school for their kids and were horrified to discover that the headmaster is Dave Horan, who's I think from 1991 or 1990. Don't shoot me if David's listening. Anyway, he was the headmaster. So you can imagine the shock when you're in a small Caribbean island. Someone's like, oh, I'm an All Grey. It's like, okay, that's just weird. All Greys are everywhere and they're influential. I think when I was younger, there were a lot of All Greys in the motor industry around the world who were like super influential. We have a lot of, like, if I look at my year, we have a lot of doctors doing really good work all over the world. We have some lawyers who are super successful. It all comes from here, I think, and our parents as well. But the ethos and the mentality you have, your approach to life is from there, which is good.
My final question, do you have any advice for someone looking to get into the gaming industry?
Wow, that's a really good question, because if you think back to my analogy of the railway line across America in a race to the West Coast, you know, when we started, there were people in gaming who came to work there irrespective of what qualification they had, in the sense of for degree or not, what work experience they had. They were drawn to it because they loved gaming. This is a very difficult thing for people to understand who don't have an absolute passion for gaming, because they can't see that this is it's unlike other sports or other hobbies or activities in that you can consume it and be engaged with it all at the same time. You can watch it, you can play it, and you can socialize around it. And so the people have a love for the industry who are desperate to work in the industry. So they would come and work, do anything to get in and start. That's how most people did in the beginning. Now, especially if you look like us, I mean, I was employee 30. Now we almost 1,800 people. It's a global company that has hundreds of millions in revenue. And it's just much more structured because we have to, apply the rules like you would in any big company. So there are people, obviously, you have to do tax and whatever. You can't come work doing tax in a gaming company if you have no idea about tax. But we do, if we look at things like brand partnerships or whatever, we do hire people who know what they're doing because we engage with very large brands around the world who are our partners or sponsors. But there are opportunities lower down, and I think the way to do it is to try to get as much experience as you can. Internship, knowing a bit about gaming helps. And there's still a startup culture in a lot of what happens. So having a mentality or an approach to, if my job is to do A, I'm also happy to do B and C whenever, and roll up my sleeves and get that done. Is a good way to do it. To get in. Persistence. I mean, there are more companies around doing competitive gaming now than before. Even in South Africa, it started to grow. I mean, I'd go to events even here. If you're in South Africa, I think there's an Africa Games Summit every year. I know there was one in Cape Town last year and the year before. Is to go and attend those events and see them, and then you build up connections like that. If there's a Counter-Strike event nearby and you're into Counter-Strike, go watch. You'll meet people. And apply for jobs, like get on those forums and apply. Even though it's a newish industry, some things don't change. The old-fashioned way is reach out to your contacts and have someone see if they can help you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's been a
Great
pleasure.
questions. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.